Good evening. I'd like to call the December 18, 2023 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Here.
Mrs. Sachs?
Here.
Mr. Cooney?
Here.
Mrs. Wise?
Here.
Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mr. Marshall? Here. Ms. Weiser?
Here. All members are present. Will you please join me in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the reading and disposal of the journal. We have a set of minutes from December 4, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion approved by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I have comments.
A second by Mr. Rock. Mr. Rock, you have the floor.
Page. There was a point in here, it was during council report where Mr. McConville stated about submitting the budget. He mentions the word March 31st, but it said March 3rd in here. So just make sure it reads March 31st.
What is that under? For the communication from council?
Yeah.
Budget cycle?
It was see it's around page 4.
Page 3.
Page 3, found it? That was my only comment.
Budget cycle by March 3rd?
31st.
Yeah.
Oh, mine's the 31st.
Okay, very good. Are there any other comments? Mrs. White?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Ms. Thomas had my corrections that we sent her. Okay.
Are there any other corrections or amendments to the record regarding these minutes? There are none further. Mrs. Thomas, we call the vote.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks? Aye. Mr. Cooney?
Abstain?
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Very good, motion carries. Thank you. Next are additions and removals from the agenda and referrals to committee. Are there any additions or removals or referrals? Seeing none, we will move on to comments from the audience. Speakers may take up to 5 minutes to address the city. If you're here to address the city this evening, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, state your name and address for the record. You may take up to 5 minutes. If there are none, then we will move on to reports and communications from the mayor and the taking of action thereon. We have a busy agenda tonight. I want to give a preview to the first meeting of January, the January 2nd meeting. Among other things, I will have on the agenda 3 nominees for BZA, seeking council confirmation for the reappointments of Ari Jaffe, Matthew Califf, and Kevin Goodman. I will have a nominee for the vacant seat on the Architectural Review Board, and I'll seek confirmation for that nominee, Brian Bronis. We will have a nominee for city engineer. We are working out the contract details now. It will be the Wallace Pancher Group, who recently acquired McKay Engineering. Richard McKay and Michael McKay were the Steve Chuney and Joe Chuney of Middleburg Heights. The McKays have all retired. The company continues on as part of the Wallace Pancher Group. Brenda Mockbee will be our primary city engineering contact, with Kimberly Kerber being our second. Ms. Mockbee has over 28 years experience in the field. Ms. Kerber over 29 years experience and is also the consulting city engineer in Fairview Park, Rocky River, and Middleburg Heights. As Wallace Pancher expands in our region, I'm excited to bring on a growing firm that is as concerned about the environment as it is about engineering, who views designs not simply in terms of function, but also beauty. I'm also excited to have a new, albeit experienced engineer, where University Heights is her first assignment as the primary at city engineer. Service Director Alan Pennington was essential to the process, being a licensed GP himself and a former traffic engineer for another community. Of the 3 firms that submitted the statements of qualifications, we both rank Wallace Pancher as our top choice. Outgoing city engineer Joe Chuney has been advised, and he has pledged his cooperation in that GPDs during the transition to Wallace Pancher. Joe Chuney has served with distinction in University Heights for over 30 years, and as he continues to work for GPD as city engineer in Beechwood and now in Mayfield Heights in 2024 and beyond, he will be around to help effectuate a seamless transition. Turning to some other imminent business, while this is far from my final council meeting or final mayor's report, this is my final council meeting as the presiding officer. I supported the charter amendment that changed presiding officer from mayor to vice mayor. Other than who has the gavel, little else should change. The agenda will be compiled by our clerk of council with the assistance of the mayor, the vice mayor, the law director, and various administrative department heads. This will continue, and that makes sense. Just as it will make sense for the mayor to continue to sponsor legislation and place it on the agenda for consideration. Notwithstanding all of that, it simply makes better sense that council preside over its own meetings, and that the vice mayor and not the mayor be the president of council. I could be sentimental about it, but I'm happy to pass the gavel, just as I did for BZA in 2018. I would be remiss, however, if I did not mention that when the Charter Review Commission approved and advanced to council the change in presiding officer, it also approved and advanced a change in how we select the law director. Currently, under the charter, the law director is chosen by the city council and serves at the pleasure of city council. A proposed amendment would have made that the mayor's nomination, subject to council confirmation, and that either the council or the mayor would have the power to terminate. Council declined to place that before the people on the November ballot. The last time we had a change in law director was 9 years ago. Mayor Infeld was part of the selection process at that time. 2 years ago, when McConville was confirmed for an additional 2-year contract, that discussion was had without my input, which was not such a big deal then because I don't think that I would have suggested doing anything differently had I been asked. On tonight's agenda, you will see that we are renewing Mr. McConville for only 3 months. His last day of law director would be March 31st, 2024. I thank Mr. McConville for his service these last 9 years and for working closely with me these last 6 years. But now the city must select a new law directors to represent the city and not just the city council. The mayor works constantly with the law director, as much, if not more, than any of the other directors or chiefs of administration who are selected by the mayor, which is why the Charter Review Commission saw fit to propose a formal amendment to reflect that. I note that even under the current charter provision, the previous mayor was part of the selection process and there's nothing prohibiting that. As mayor, I seek to be part of the selection process this time as well for the next law director. It is essential to the functioning of the city that the sole full-time elected official who works closely with the law director have a part in the selection and process. Thank you. This concludes my report. Next are reports and communications from the City Council and the taking of action thereon. Mrs. Wise.
Yes, thank you. I know that City Council will be putting out an advertisement for a new law director. I'm sure whoever the vice mayor is will be inviting you to those interviews. And City Council will be selecting a new law director before March 31st. Thank you.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Are there any other reports from council members this evening? Yes, Mr. Quinn.
I'd like to state that I'd like to offer my apologies to the residents of the city for some of my absences from recent city council meetings. I've had a personal situation develop which has impacted my schedule and needed to be addressed. The issue is being resolved, and at this time, I do not anticipate any potential for conflicts in 2024. I acknowledge that a lack of communication between myself, Mayor Brennan, and my colleagues. I spoke with Mayor Brennan and Vice Mayor Weiss on December 5th, 2023, regarding my situation. Although I admit my communication with the mayor and city council should have been better, I did not give permission for members of council to press the mayor and vice mayor for additional personal information during the December 5th council meeting. Recently, Mrs. Sachs has started a scorecard about my attendance. I consider this extremely unprofessional as an attempt to humiliate me during public meetings. All Mrs. Sachs had to do was just call. And I asked, why did you not just call? I would like to remind Mrs. Sachs that when she was referred to as the dumbest member of council, I was the first and only member of council who approached the mayor directly and requested that he consider issuing an apology. It is interesting Mrs. Sachs chose to target my attendance, yet she did not offer the same courtesy to former members Blankfeld and Gold, who earlier this year had repeated absences. I'm sure all of us would be interested. Mrs. Sachs found a report on the 2023 council member attendance scoring. And congratulations in advance to the council member who receives a good start. This concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Are there any other reports from council at this time? Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you. I have reached out to a couple of people, and have had poor, if no response. I have had response from Mr. Cooney at times, and I will address this with Mr. Cooney after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Are there any other reports from council at this time? If there are none, we will then turn to the reports and communications of the directors of the various departments. Many of them are out, excused today, many of them are on vacation because of the time of the year. But we will start with Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. I did send out late this afternoon a series of financial reports that summarize city activity through the end of November. As opposed to going through those things line by line, I'll just give you a couple of highlights after you've had a chance to take a look at those things. If anybody has any questions, please give me a call. Again, it's through November, so none of the budget adjustments that were done at the previous meeting or tentative adjustments proposed tonight are included amongst those reports. Through November, total revenue in the general fund, $16,316,313. For all funds, total revenue is $20,778,326. Total expenses, year-to-date through November, general fund, $15,418,874. For all funds, spending this year, $19,506,689. So the year-to-date surplus so far in the general fund, $897,439. For all funds, again, this is the excess of revenue over expenses, $1,271,000. We started out the year with a general fund balance of $6,540,809. That has risen to the point where at the end of November, general fund balance is $7,438,248. And for all funds, we started the year with a fund balance $10,016,057. At November 30th, that number is $11,287,694. Some other numbers of note: the difference between revenue through the end of November last year and this year. This year we're in a positive variance of $147,245. That's a little under 1% increase. The increase for all funds is about 1.2%, $253,907. Our expenses this year as compared to last year, they're up 5.96%. For all funds, expenses are down from last year, $343,296. And just a couple other points of interest. At the end of November last year, we had an investment portfolio balance of $7,750,475. This year, at the end of November, it's $8,663,175. So we've increased our investments $912,700, which is a little bit under 12%. And as I said, there's a series of reports that were emailed out to everybody today, so if you've had a chance to look at those, please contact me if you have any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Are there any questions this evening for Mr. Kennedy? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Next is Director of Law, Mr. McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to you and to the members of council, to all the department heads, and to the residents of the city for giving me the opportunity to serve as your law director. With my contract coming up, I just thought it was a good time to make a transition. There's some opportunities that I'm excited to take a part of within the context of my firm practice. And I think the city will benefit from a new voice and a new person sitting in this chair. So again, I want to say thank you to all of you, and I'll probably have a little more to say sometime in March as my tenure comes to a close. Other than that, I intend to provide you with a substantive report in executive session this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Any questions for Mr. McConville? Thank you. Oh, yes. Mrs. Wells.
I just want to say, I hope that we have a party for you in March, but that you will be sorely missed. and I beg to differ. I think you're an asset to the community, and your legal advice and your demeanor and just your professionalism was an asset to the city.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. We'll move on then to public safety, police.
Mayor, no report.
Okay, no report. Thank you, Chief Rogers. Public safety fire, Chief Perko has been excused from this evening's meeting and he has no report. Service department, Mr. Pennington's been excused from this evening's meeting and he has no report. Building, Mr. Chief.
In light of the busy agenda, I'll pass my report.
Very good. And I know you were at the building committee meeting, so thank you for being there for that. So no report from Mr. Chun tonight. Housing Community Development, Mr. Engelbrecht is also excused from this evening's meeting. City Engineer, Mr. Chun.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have one project left, and that is the East Scarborough Canterbury Sanitary Relief Sewer. It's under construction. They're 90% done with the pipe installation. They would have completed this week, but with the weather today, they took off. I'm sure they're not going to be here tomorrow. And they get as much done as they can this week. I was anticipating them finishing before the holiday, and then they take all next week off, so they won't be back till January 2nd to do restoration. They will get all the pipe in and all the connections in, and then it's just a matter of the sidewalk and the street being repaired. I've heard any complaints or any problems with the residents getting into their driveways or the detour route that's been posted. So, end of my report.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chun. Any questions for Mr. Chun? Okay, thank you. Communications and civic engagement, Mr. Cook is excused from this evening's meeting. Economic development, Mrs. Drucker.
Councilman Rock, I was not about to say no. Okay, just on December 7th at a planning commission meeting, Cross America did have an application that they brought forward to rezone 4 parcels on Warrensville Center Road from U2 to U7. That was to replace a BP station that was voted down, 5-0 vote, and a lot of the discussion was around what's going to happen, the possibilities that could happen on Warrensville Center Road, that entryway into the city. So it was a very healthy discussion that we had, that was held at planning, but also to say it's not just a total vote down, but we need to see the bigger picture over there before you start zoning certain parcels, and what are we going to do in totality, especially taking in what we're going to be doing with the zoning code update. Secondly, I would just like to say thank you to Joe Chuney for, he has been instrumental in all the different projects I've worked on. And so Joe, I just want to say thank you for your service, for your help to me for the 4 years that I've been here. And I wish you well with your future endeavors. Another report I'll have will be done in executive session. And then finally, I just want to wish everyone a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season.
Thank you, Mrs. Drucker. Any questions for Mrs. Drucker? All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our reports from the various departments and their directors. We now turn to item 9, reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, consideration of agenda items, and we turn now to item A. Resolution 2023-76, dedicating the gazebo at Walter Stinson Park in honor of Mayor Susan K. Infeld in recognition of her years of dedicated service to the city and her many accomplishments as mayor and as a member of council. Mayor Infeld is here this evening, and we do have a resolution, which, if I may, I'd like to read into the record. Whereas Susan K. Infeld served as a council person for the city of University Heights from January of 1996 to December of 2007. Whereas Susan K. Infeld served as the mayor of University Heights from January of 2010 until December of 2018. Whereas in 2012, Mayor Susan K. Infeld held a town hall meeting on March 12th to introduce the concept of the purchase of the former Fuchs Mizrachi School property to become a central park for the city of University Heights. Whereas on April 16, 2012, Council approved Mayor Susan K. Infeld's purchasing the former Fuchs Mizrachi School site to begin to make that vision a reality. Whereas throughout the remainder of 2012, Mayor Susan K. Infeld guided the demolition of buildings and preparation of the site for use as a park. Whereas Mayor Susan K. Infeld organized a citizen committee to guide the planning for the new University Heights Park. Whereas Mayor Susan K. Infeld supported and worked for passage of the levy that funded the vision of the park that the committee developed. Whereas after its construction, Walter Stinson Park, formerly known as the Walt, has become a gathering place for children and adults of University Heights. Whereas the Walt has become an integral part of the lives of University Heights residents. Whereas Mayor Susan K. Infeld saw the gazebo as the centerpiece and focal point of the Walt, which is now used for concerts and events. Whereas the members of the University Heights City Council, whose names are affixed below, wish to recognize the work of Mayor Susan K. Infeld in making the Walter Stinson Park a reality, and wish to name the gazebo in honor of that foresight and guidance. The council further directs the administration to prepare and affix to the gazebo a plaque for all to read that reflects this resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of University Heights, Ohio, that Section 1, Council hereby offers its sincerest thanks to Mayor Susan K. Infeld for her dedication, vision, and work in making Walter Stinson Park a reality, names the gazebo at the Walt the Mayor Susan K. Infeld Gazebo, and further directs the administration to prepare and affix to the gazebo a plaque for all to read that reflects this resolution. Council wishes Mayor Susan K. Infeld well in all of her future endeavors. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that result in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements. Signed, City of University Heights, Mayor and all members of council. Mayor Infeld, it is such a delight to have you here this evening and at long last to recognize you for your service. So I'm so glad that we are doing this at this time, and I'm sure that others have things that they would like to say as well. It has been a pleasure following you in your footsteps and also going in another direction here in the city, but building upon all the great work that you did here. So thank you, and delighted that we are recognizing you at this point. Who would like the floor?
Thank you. Is it all right if I say
Oh, yes,
a word
please.
and
Come on
say
to the
something?
podium.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank everybody here. Thank you very much for this recognition. I'm truly grateful and touched by it. Thank you especially to the council members who were here during that whole process, Michelle and John. It was a long process. I actually had the idea to establish a park at that site long before it ever happened. I met with Mayor Rothschild about it when I decided to run for city council in the mid-1990s. And I mentioned to her what a great site that would be for a park. And then she gave me the background and the history and said that when the Northwood School vacated the site, the school district had offered the property for sale, for purchase by university. It wasn't the right time. Thankfully, Hughes Mizrahi bought the school, brought in a wave of young families to the community. And when the property became available for sale in 2010, I was mentioning to Wynn before the meeting, I can't remember if Mr. Maury Weiss approached me or if I approached him about purchasing the property. But it was about a 2-year process of negotiating. And I don't want to review necessarily all the dates that the mayor had mentioned in that proclamation, but we had 2 law directors. At the time we had, I started this process with Tony Coyne, and then I think the park may have opened, but there's always, with big construction projects, a lot of detail work afterwards. So, Luke was really my right-hand person with a lot of that. And I also have to give a nod to the finance director. Dennis wasn't the finance director for me during that process. It was Larry Heiser, who's now in Beechwood, but so many department directors were involved with this planning. The council, as you remember, it was a 6-year process, starting in 2010, and then the park opened in 2016. And as so many of you had said to me before the meeting, and as I truly believe, it's a wonderful addition to the community, and nothing makes me happier than to see little kids playing on the playground or riding their bikes. It's even fun in the summertime to see parents pulling a wagon with kids. And I get the sense, now that my kids are all grown, that they're trying to get their kids there after dinner to tire them out so that they'll sleep well for the night. But thank you so much for this recognition. And I also want to thank particularly, she's not here, Annie Rollinson. I know that behind the scenes she advocated very hard for this. And I do want to say that Annie is somebody that I've known since I became involved in University Heights, getting the park and playground built at Purvis Park. Annie was integral to that process. And she's a wonderful person. She was somebody who was always ready. When Mayor Rothschild had a job, Annie and Elbert, her husband, were always the first people to say, we'll do it, we'll volunteer. She served on so many committees in University Heights. And when she contacted me to tell me that she was doing this, and then shortly afterwards I talked to Wynn, I was floored. So thank you so very much. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Ms. Weiser.
We're not going to let you get the last word, Susan. You're right. Annie Rollinson, in large part, was a lot of the force behind this happening. And out of all the people that I've met in University Heights, Annie Rollinson only sees the good. And she reminds us that we all need to try to remember that. Because when we do, we see a picture that is much broader than I think our own little personal lives. I think as public servants, and I think you'd agree with this, is that everybody leaves behind a mix of good and where we screw up. And I think everybody prays the good always outweighs the screw-ups. And one thing for sure, ambling around the park this summer, I was continually struck by just how people interact with each other. And community can only happen when people can actually talk to one another and interact with one another. Because that's how we discover how similar we are, even though we're all different. And I think on that one point, that park has become integral to pulling together the fabric of University Heights. So it certainly is an honor that's well-deserved, and thank you for all the work you did.
Thank you, Ms. Weiser. Any other comments at this time? And if not, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rob?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, resolution passes. We have two copies here that will be signed by all members of council and myself. I'm going to go ahead and sign now. We'll pass these around, and we will pause briefly to do that, and then present a copy to Mayor. We could do two-page resolution. Yes, I voted. we had this all summer. Barry felt we would love to take a picture of it with you all together, and we would also be happy to go ahead and frame this and bring it to you as soon as we have it framed. So.
Kelly's in the picture.
The official.
Take our pictures.
I wouldn't mind doing that at all. I'd consider it. There you go. Yeah, we could. There we go. Thank you. Oh, Raymond. Gotta be Raymond. Oh, solid memories. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item B, Resolution 2023-85, recognizing the accomplishments of Joe Chuney upon his retirement as city engineer for University Heights. I'll go ahead and read this one into the record. Whereas serving under 3 mayors, Joe Chuney has dedicated most of his professional life to making University Heights a better place to live as its city engineer. Whereas Joe started out working with his father, the former city engineer, and became city engineer when his dad retired. Whereas the city engineer does the heavy lifting for public works, including those things that residents take for granted until they do not work. Most are things critical for the well-being and efficient functioning of the city, but are hidden from view. Whereas Joe has used his talents to find unique solutions when money was tight, to ensure roads could still be paved and critical projects could be completed, Joe always found a way to get things done and always had the best outcomes for the city in mind. Whereas Joe is not only a gentleman but in nature, but a true gentleman in how he treats all that he works with and meets. Whereas Joe is a longtime former University Heights resident and has actively participated in coaching youth soccer in the Heights for decades. Whereas University Heights Council acknowledges the contributions Joe has made to all of us over his 30-plus year career and wishes him the best on his retirement, University Heights will miss him and his talents. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of University Heights, Ohio, that Section 1 Council hereby offers its sincerest congratulations and thanks to Joe Chuney upon his retirement as city engineer for University Heights, for his decades of dedication and outstanding service to the city and its residents. Council wishes Joe Chuney all of the best in all of his future endeavors. Joe, you will be missed. Section 2 is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of this council and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that result in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements. Signed, City of University Heights, Ohio, by the mayor and all members of council. Mr. Cheney, thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done. Closely, Susan Drucker, said it very well, and I will say it as well. When I said that I was excited about what was coming next, that was not in any way a reflection of how very honored I have been to have worked with you and GPD and your staff and the care and attention that you have given the city and have given the projects that we've worked on together. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you had a long agenda, so I'll be real quick. I do appreciate this resolution and all those kind words. 32 years, where did they go? I don't know. As it said in the resolution, I served under 3 mayors, but I also served under several chiefs and directors that are very talented, and they had the city's best interests at heart, all of them. So this weekend, I tried to think about all of those, and this is not an official list, but down here, start with the easy one. I worked for only 2 clerks of council, Kelly Thomas and Nancy English, and I won't mention all these names. I worked under 4 law directors, or with 4 law directors. I worked with 4 police chiefs. I worked with 3 building commissioners, and they've had 3 representatives in that time, so maybe it's 6, I'm not sure. I worked with 6 service directors, 6 fire chiefs, and I think I have them all because there are a number of interims in there, and there's some interim chiefs. I think I counted them all. I had 7 finance directors, 32 years. So you guys do the math, 32 years divided by 7 or 6, or see what your longevity is. Anyway, I think I attended over 600 council meetings. I think there are a possibility probably of 640 or 650 or something in those 32 years with the special committee council meetings. I can't count them all, but I know I attended probably about 600 of them. Somebody asked me once, or told me once, you should write a book. And I probably could write a very interesting book just about the council meetings. I wouldn't have to make it up because you can't make this stuff up. It was a very interesting book. In closing, I do want to thank University Heights for having the faith and the confidence in me to continue to renew my contract every year. I know that I honor my oath to faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge my duties as city engineer. I enjoyed working here. I love the city of University Heights. I'm very proud of the work I did here. I'm also proud of all the problems I solved, and that's what engineers do. We're problem solvers. I never pretended to be the smartest guy in the room because I'm not. But I am a problem solver. And when you guys came to me with problems, I could usually solve it or find some resolution to it. So thank you again for the resolution, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you. Would anybody like the floor? And if not, I'd be happy to take a motion to approve the resolution.
Oh, Ms. White, please. I was going to say something. Joe, if you write that book, I'll have to tell everybody how you solved our tight money years ago by saying, oh, we'll only replace 10% of the curbs. Because then a few residents come looking for you. But it worked, and it kept us going, and that's the way engineers think. If we can find a way and still get the overall job done, and it works, why not do it? So thank you.
And here, I thought you were going to say the dip in the road and see the road.
No, I'll leave the dip of the road that got fixed this time. That's an in-joke between Joe and
I actually thought of that too. But yeah, it's gone.
And I'll make the motion to accept the resolution.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the resolution by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Brown. Any further discussion? Mrs. Weiser.
Yeah, I just wanted to let Mr. Cheney know that Lynn was the one that actually wrote the resolution and spoke to council members. So I thought that was important for him to know, and it's well deserved. And we will sorely miss you. I want you to know that all of council value you and your work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. There's no further discussion or motion on the floor. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rob?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries, and we have 2 copies of the resolution for all signs.
And we'll frame those two, I
We
hope.
will frame them.
I know you will. Thank you.
Mr. Cheney, I think you know the drill. We're going to do a photo.
That'd be great.
Mayor, you served with a mighty club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was just saying to Joe, I should have given him his, the credit to him for obviously nothing gets built like a park without the engineer.
No, we do that.
All these were there.
Yes.
We never saw that.
Thank you. Before I proceed to the next agenda item, Mr. Kennedy has brought to my attention. For items C and D, and then for item R, we have representatives to change all those items. C and D are next, but he has asked if we would do Clemens Nelson's representative, the courtesy of moving them up on the agenda. I would entertain a motion to move item R to become the agenda item immediately following item D.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Sachs, second by Mr. King. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move to item C, a motion for the approval of the renewal of the city's medical insurance contract for city employees of Medical Mutual of Ohio as proposed to include pharmaceutical benefits and vision coverage. Mr. Kennedy, I know there's also Representative Fidelli here. Thank you before, sir.
Thank you. First thing, I think we need to amend the motion because we also have to recommend renewing the rates with Guardian as well.
Oh, yes. That is, that would be correct. Mr. Conville, is that something we can just amend when we make the motion? Because we need to amend the reading of the agenda items.
I think when you make the motion,
Okay.
it's sufficient.
Very good, thank you. Okay, please proceed.
Just to summarize, our contracts for various employee health insurance contracts includes medical, prescription, vision, dental, and life, expire on December 31st, 2023. We have a healthcare insurance consultant, the Fidelli Group. They assist us throughout the year with various issues related to our contracts with various carriers. And they also put together a recommendation and review of our contracts and look at some competitive options when the renewal period comes up. We're always on a tight kind of schedule at this point of the year. We start the process in late September. We're coming off a 2-year contract with Medical Mutual. That's the primary expense of the health insurance for employees. This current year, there's a 0% increase from the prior year. The proposal that we received from Medical Mutual constitutes an 18.9% increase over the current rates. And while that sounds fairly significant, there's a couple items we should consider. Number one, the inflation, the rates of inflation have gone up pretty significantly, so if you amortize that increase over the past 2 years, I think it's more reasonable. And we have some issues that I'll let our representative talk about in a moment. But we had 25 high claimants above $10,000 in claims, and those total for those 25 people amount to $1.2 million, and that's pretty much what we paid Medical Mutual in premiums. So they're operating at a loss. So we were expecting the prospect of an increase. Our initial increase was significantly higher than the 18.9%, but we were able to negotiate that down. The total cost for insurance in 2024 for medical and prescription is estimated to be $1.65 million. Our current premium this year is approximately $1.39 million. So that increase next year will be $263,608. Now, those are not exact figures because we're reliant on what groups are comprised and what level of insurance individuals participate in. But it's a good estimate that our costs will go up about $263,000. Dental rates through Guardian will decrease from our current premium, which is $69,408 to $66,630. All the rates that were proposed were discussed with members of our healthcare committee. Those members are comprised of representatives of all the unions, police, fire, and service, and a couple of folks from the administrative pool of employees. The consensus of that group was that we should take the renewal as proposed by Medical Mutual, and I could ask Mr. Lang, I have Josh Lang here from Fidelity Group to can give you kind of a little bit of background on the state of the industry and maybe the process we went through, including getting some competitive costs to prepare this proposal to. So, and we can answer any questions there.
Good afternoon, Josh Lang. I'm the Vice President, Public Sector Practice Leader for the Fidelity Group, and assist the city in their consulting work as it relates to employee benefits for the city, right? I think Dennis did a very nice overview, so thank you for the opportunity in a couple minutes here to help maybe walk through that process. The city has fully insured benefits, meaning that they pay a premium to the carrier holds all the risk, versus maybe a self-funded arrangement where the city would then pay a carrier an administration charge and then burden some of that risk. So just to be clear, the city of University Heights is under a fully insured contract with Medical Mutual for their medical prescription and vision, and then the ancillary coverage, which would be life and dental, are held by Guardian. Through the planning of this renewal, we try to get out ahead of it as early as possible. We did recognize, as Dennis mentioned, that there was some high claimant activity that was unusually high comparative to previous experience periods. So through those discussions and kind of analysis, we did perform what we would refer to as an RFP, which is a request for a proposal, and we aggressively marketed the city's plan. What that means is that we went out to your current carriers, basically competitors, provided them all the information that they would need to solicit quotes and provide aggressive marketing back for us to present to the city. We did do that. The original renewal came in from Medical Mutual at a 29.9% increase. Through that aggressive kind of marketing for 2024, we received quotes from United Healthcare that were not competitive, meaning that they were higher than what Medical Mutual was proposing, and declined the quotes from Aetna and Cigna. So they took the city's risk and said, we're not interested, and did not provide a quote for 2024. Anthem, however, was the only competitor that did complete and submit a competitive quote as it relates to the benefits at about a 16.4% increase comparative to Medical Mutual's 29.9%. However, important to note, Anthem would not be able to administer the same benefits that are being administered and have the ability for your employees to elect. So while the rate was a little bit less, they would not be able to match the benefits, which frankly could cause some issues with your employees. We then took that competitive data back to Medical Mutual and asked them to revise their numbers, which I think Dennis, the finance director, elected to tell you that they negotiated that rate down to an 18.9%, which is where you stand now. We also did market and go back to Guardian, who decreased your rates on the dental and are holding your rates as they relate to the basic life and accident and dismemberment insurance. Medical Mutual is also going to hold the rate or propose a 0% increase to your vision. So based on that RFP process and negotiations with all the carriers, those were our recommendations to the city, that they would renew all their lines of coverage with the incumbent carriers based on all the revised figures that have been applied.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Are there any questions for Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Sacks.
Thank you very much for negotiating on behalf of the city. So you work, I just want to understand, you work directly with Mr. Kennedy. Do you work with our HR consultant at all?
Typically, everything is run through the finance department.
Okay.
We do participate in your HR committee. I think we met a couple weeks ago to go over basically what we discussed today to allow them the ability to understand and ask questions.
But that consultant has nothing to do with this, and no part.
Frankly, I'm not quite sure if they're part of that committee or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lane? Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
I would just ask that the motion be amended to recommend renewing with Medical Mutual for medical, vision, and prescription, and also to renew with Guardian for dental and life.
Very good. I would then ask for a motion for the approval of the renewal of the city's medical insurance contract for city employees with Medical Mutual of Ohio as proposed, to include pharmaceutical benefits and vision coverage, together with Guardian for dental and basic life insurance.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Sacks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion on the motion? Oh, Mrs. Weiss.
Yeah, I just wanted, I guess the council to know that I deal with, benefit renewals, and I think it's really a great practice that there's a committee that reviews this. There's a lot of input and a lot of discussion, and I think that's very beneficial to the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Any further? If not, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
A very good motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, next is item D, a motion to approve the Planning Commission recommendation from the December 7, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. It's the application from Fabo Architecture for Colel YCM 2480 and 2500 South Green Road parking lot expansion project. It's in three parts. Part one, site plan approval for the proposed parking lot expansion, new driveway to be located on residential parcel. Point two, approval of easement, and point three, variance from the 30-foot parking setback requirement set forth in codified ordinance 1274.02 C2. I think the applicant is here to present. If you would please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you may proceed. Oh, yes, and because this is quasi-judicial, if we could swear in, Mr. Conley.
We swear or affirm the testimony we give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. You may proceed.
So we're actually looking at a pretty simple project here. The existing Colel facility is a rather compact site plan parking lot, and the two-way drive that loops to the south only has parking off of the north side of it. It's just a curve to the south. Now, the Colel does own the residential parcel to the south of this. So we're proposing to do, right now the driveway to the house runs alongside of it, and then does a 180-degree loop to a rear-loaded garage. What we're planning on doing is removing the driveway so we could extend 12 parking spaces, and where the landscaping currently is, shift the landscaping over to the section that's between the existing garage and the new curb, and then install a new driveway that will go head on right into the what's now the rear of the garage that faces the street. We end up putting an overhead door on the front, and then a man door and a window on the rear. There would be fence that would run both sides to match what's existing now off of the front and rear corners of the garage to try to get more landscaping. And the easement is that entire area for both parking and the landscaping, so that the landscaping would all be maintained on the same cycle.
Very good. Very good. Just for the record, you're Brian Fabo of Fabo Architecture.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Just want to make sure that got all the way. Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Fadel? Oh, I'll just very quickly say, at Planning Commission, I was the one that made the motion on all three parts of this. We have different seconds, one from Mr. Casey, one from Mr. Rock, one from Mrs. Urban. This is a project where the applicant has worked with the administration, and we appreciate when projects are brought so that we can go through a process and review these items preliminarily to help make them the best applications they can be, in our view, before they come forward and are subjected then to further review by Planning Commission and City Council. So thank you for doing that. I will note then that this application does have the backing and approval and support of the administration. So thank you. Any questions or comments?
Mayor, my only comment would be, I would ask that council consider each of the three components separately, since we do have a variance involved.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Mr. Rowe.
I'll just note one more thing for the record. You may have mentioned it, maybe you didn't. The parking lot does go over the property line as that easement, but the applicant owns the property on both sides. So nobody else is impacted by that.
Okay, so technically the easement is being granted by the COL one parcel ownership to the other. And of course the easement runs with the property. So if for some reason someone did purchase the house, the easement would still remain intact until both property owners agreed to dissolve it.
Yes, I think that's a correct statement. Okay. There are three items here then for approval. If there's no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the Planning Commission recommendation from December 7, 2023 Planning Commission meeting with respect to the site plan approval for the proposed parking lot expansion and new driveway to be located on residential parcel? We'll start with that. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Mr. King. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Next, with respect to the Planning Commission recommendation from December 7, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, I'd ask for a motion to approve the easement. Motion by Mrs. Weiss, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Marshall. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Finally, with respect to the Planning Commission recommendation from December 7, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, we need a motion to approve the variance from the 30-foot parking setback requirements set forth in codified ordinance 1274.02 C2. Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rock. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Okay, next item on the agenda that we're calling taking one out of order is item R, which is a motion to extend the human resources contract with Clemens Nelson for the period of 12 months from January 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, in an amount not to exceed $82,505. I know there's a representative from Clemens Nelson here, and I know Mr. Kennedy, you brought this item. I would give the floor to you this time.
Thank you, and thank you for moving it up in consideration of the folks here from Clemens Nelson.
Yes.
Just some background on this. Last December, almost a year ago today, council approved by motion an extension to the city's agreement with Clemens Nelson for the period January 1st through December 31st, 2023. To date, in 2023, we paid $39,592.50. The amount not to exceed for the year was $48,000. Those costs have all been charged to a 2023 purchase order. There's another in-process payment of $5,615 right now that will increase our year-to-date payments to $45,207.50. So currently, we have an additional $31,297.50 in invoices for the months of August through November of 2023. And allowing for an estimated invoice in December, the projected total expense for this year, 2023, will reach $82,505. Allowing for the approved spending authority, that would be the open amount that's still on the purchase order that was generated at the beginning of the year, we will have $2,792.50 available to pay against any outstanding invoices. So that leaves us with a differential of $34,505 to potentially provide funding for all the pending or estimated invoices as of today. I think council is aware that we had Mr. Michael Zalesnik as our representative from Clemens Nelson. He is no longer with the firm. We do have a couple of reps here that I'll introduce in a moment. But Mr. Zalesnik did participate in all 4 collective bargaining agreements, both discussions, negotiations, and appearances at council meetings, some of which were in executive session. I do believe that the majority of the charges that comprise the cost overrun are attributable to those negotiations. So without any kind of additional spending authority being granted beyond that $48,000 that was provided for last December's motion, we won't be unable to process payment for the pending invoices. Just so everyone knows, we have not exceeded the amount. We cut off the spending in enough time to not go over 40. But we will need some additional authority to pay some or all of the pending invoices. And if I could at this time, I could ask there's a couple of representatives from Clemens Nelson, Mr. Michael Esposito and Ms. Melissa Fisco. They're aware of the situation and are here to answer any questions and give their particulars related to the outstanding costs.
Sure. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Esposito and Ms. Fisco, you go before.
Okay, great. Just let me introduce, first of all, thanks for having us. Obviously, I usually don't like to have a meeting like this because it's obviously there's something to talk about and the budget or the projected allocation and the actual appropriated funds are in line with the cost incurred. So nobody likes to have that.
Speak in the mic.
I'm sorry.
The microphone.
All right, let's try that. Is that better?
Thank you.
Much better? Usually people don't like to hear me talk so much. You know, we can get there. So this isn't the ideal meeting to be at, but it's one that, fortunately for me, I haven't had to deal with it much times in 22 years we've been doing this. Coming up on 22, I've been doing this since 2002. My name is Mike Esposito, I'm Vice President of Clemens Nelson. And when we have these situations, if they occur, I am here. Melissa Fisco, who's the Assistant Regional Manager, and she will be the next in line to run the Northeast region, is here too. She is also taken over for Mike here. So we are interested in continuing the relationship. We thank you very much for the opportunity you've given us, and we want to reassure you that we are going to put certain controls in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. I will tell you that the council legislates and appropriates. They give the money, and that's the big thing in legislate. So we're not spendthrifts. We don't just spend. We do what our clients ask us to do. And Mike got engaged to be part of the negotiations. There's also, you have to understand too, in the HR world, there are day-to-day things that don't happen. You schedule consulting rate and sometimes run into things. And that's a little bit of what happened here. And I think I think maybe we should have, thrown up the caution flag much sooner and said, we need to get this resolved or say no. I also think Mike, while he is certainly qualified to do these things, and he's got a lot of experience, when you're dealing with clients saying, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, it's tough sometimes when you're in the customer service building in business to say no, because you're trying to keep things moving. And everything can't just grind to a halt on a day-to-day operation, particularly if you have to do something that people are trying to get contracts settled, they're trying to get stuff done. If you have a pre-disciplinary conference that needs to be done in a timeline, grievance hearing that needs to happen in a timeline, and you're going to be part of that stuff. You run into some of those things. Now, that doesn't absolve us as a vendor to pay a little more attention to this, but if we're realistic on things, particularly in the labor relations and HR field, sometimes this type of stuff does happen depending on the amount of extra things that are going on. I took a look at the on-site as to what you guys have incurred, just the straight on-site stuff, and the on-site billing, including Melissa's time you were up here in December, is kind of right around the point. It's right about 49,000, slightly over. So that's not where the overages came. The overages came mostly from the negotiations stuff and some of the other input day-to-day things. I will tell you, I guess the silver lining to this is while we're talking about the outstanding balances for 23 and a potential 24, I don't think a 24 number would be anywhere close to the roughly 83 that you put it at. I think the on-site number was extremely close, and I think if you had up to 65 to just deal with the day-to-day, other stuff that could happen, grievance meetings, additional stuff and things like that, I think you guys would be good. And I will just tell you that we take it seriously, and I've talked a little bit with Dennis about this. We are in a position to hold ourselves to account and tell you guys that we are willing to step up and put some of this money back in your own pockets with this stuff, because I feel awful about this. And I don't like having these meetings. I hate them, as a matter of fact. But it is what it is at that point in time. We did do the work. It was asked for, but at the same time, council being the funding authority, probably should have said, I can't come to these meetings, I can't do this until we make sure we got that covered. Because our primary responsibility is to be there in that HR capacity for the day-to-day stuff. So at that point in time, open it up and just ask me any questions. I get the sense that probably as the appointing authority, mayor's over there, and you guys are the appropriating authority, you guys want to know this stuff. So I'm here to answer your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Mrs. Wells.
Thank you for coming and being honest and open about this issue. I was very taken aback. This is the first that we've heard about this. I have a number of questions.
Sure.
Who gave the authority for Mr. Zelenik to engage in the union negotiations? Because we pay a labor law attorney to go to them. To me, it seems like it's tough. Yeah, and I was actually surprised in our executive sessions when he was there giving a report. So who gave him the authority to go to those meetings?
I can't tell you what individual person told him to do it because I wasn't here. I can tell you that in collective bargaining circumstances, it's this interesting dynamic. The way 4117 works is the chief executive of a municipal corporation is the official who's responsible for all collective bargaining. However, on the flip side, council is responsible to accept or reject a fact-finding report and approve any negotiated agreement. So you had this, and I think it happened at Brook Park maybe about 15, 20 years ago, where chief executive wanted to have a representative, and there's some questions with council about the representative, and courts got involved and they said, no, chief executive gets picked, council is the appropriating authority, so they give you the money to pay. So you have that interesting dance that goes on. I can tell you that Mike wasn't there attending your meetings without any instruction from somebody, because he wouldn't have been there. I don't know who exactly has to be there. I don't know if Jeremy did. I don't know if the mayor did. I don't know who did that. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I will tell, let me address just real quick. I don't know if this is what went on too, but I have been involved in negotiations as a representative and just as on a consulting basis, back channeling. And occasionally I've assisted council by helping do some things that if they were to do them themselves, wouldn't have been as cost efficient. And also what we have going with just the scope of the practice. Like I represent Mayfield Heights, Lyndhurst. She represents Cleveland Heights right on the corner. We can lay our hands on a lot of data very quickly because of the scope of places we represent. And sometimes that is actually more cost effective. So I'd be concerned about, obviously, like encouragement, duplication of services. Why do we have two people there? I get it. On the flip side, there may have been some things that Jeremy passed off to get together because it was more efficient from a cost perspective to get the information and have him do it. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not making excuses for anybody. So now I'm just want to mention that because I wasn't there to explore the dynamic and I didn't have any control of that particular thing. Okay.
Mayor, did you ask him to go to those meetings?
I did ask him to go to those meetings.
So where was the oversight in the contract? This was our first year in the contract. We're very careful with our budget here.
You're doing a good job. I heard the report. I hope and I will say this.
$34,000 over a contract is a lot.
Yeah, that is.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you.
It is more. It was. I didn't realize how much had accumulated until fairly late in this process. I will say that having Michael Zalesnik on the negotiating team with Jeremy yielded excellent results with regard to our collective bargaining agreements, and that Zalesnik's presence here generally, Clemens Nelson's presence here generally, has been most helpful with regard to resolving grievances, not having to go to arbitration, and cutting through. There are many other aspects where money was saved because of the work that Michael Zalesnik did. We did not have to have any fact-finding. We didn't have to have any grievances that went to arbitration. None of these things occurred. We have had arbitrations in the past. We have had to spend on these items. And having our HR manager a part of the collective bargaining was essential, especially in the sense that it is Clemens Nelson who is here on site to handle grievances, handle items that come up within the confines of the CBA, and not Mr. Iosu. So having Mr. Iosu there as the sure hand who has been our labor counsel and is familiar with our CBAs and has negotiated them before, having Mr. Zalesnik there as well with respect to his management of HR. It was a team approach. It has yielded great results this year in labor and HR management. It is unfortunate that we end up spending more than we originally anticipated, but the results, we got value for the work.
So 3 years ago, we got great results with Mr. Iosu also, without Mr. Zalesnik. I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing his name. Zalesnik.
Yes.
And I hope he did a great job with grievances. I don't know his day-to-day work. When he presented to council with some other pieces of work that he came to us, it was sloppy. I would not have asked him to come back. I would have asked for another representative, frankly. And I'm glad you're here today, and I'm glad that we're having somebody new, because that was one of the things that I would have stated publicly. And I'm not sure, Mayor, how you would have thought that having him go to all of those labor negotiations wouldn't have had the contract be more than the contracted amount. And so much more than the contracted amount. I mean, the amount of hours that he must have had must have been outrageous for it to be so much more.
Well, he generally was here on Wednesdays, and most of the labor negotiations occurred on Wednesdays. So I was under the impression that this work was being done within the confines of his time period. I was not aware that he was exceeding time to this degree.
Okay, so then I'm asking, your company, you need to meet us in the middle. And we can't.
I will just put it this way, I'm prepared to do that. I think the number that Dennis talked was like 34, so 17. We'll take that off, we'll leave it. And I'll tell you on the next, if we get the chance to continue to perform and turn this around, it won't happen again. I mean, I'm a big boy, Melissa's a big boy. Well,
she's big.
No, she's not. No, she's not. Obviously. I make a pronoun joke or something like that. Come on.
That's all right.
We can move on to that statement. But, we acknowledge that we should have flagged this issue for you. It's not enough to just, I hope you realize that you get in there, you get put in the middle, you're just doing stuff. And doesn't make it right, it's just how it happened. And I'd like to move on by it. Do right by you guys.
Thank you. Ms. Weiser.
What concerns me is twofold. Number one, the billing coming from you. But number two, the lack of controls in administration. Because that also should have been caught at the other end as well. Because there are set hours, just to say, well, you're here on Wednesday and we negotiated on Wednesday, doesn't totally cover it, because obviously there was more than just Wednesdays involved, which means there was more than just contract negotiations involved in that overrun. And that's almost double the contract. And you end up, if we don't have good internal controls, with a company that we've contracted with being put in this position. So it's two-sided. I be very honest with you, and I appreciate your honesty. You guys didn't catch it at your end. But I also think we need to have better controls, obviously, on this stuff, so that we don't override these contracts, and then you come to council and say, hey, I need $34,000 more to cover additional work that I decided I wanted done, or I wanted rolled into it, or I thought was good, or I thought would save us money, instead of getting prior approval. Sometimes just asking for the approval instead of deciding you can overspend is probably a good thing for all of us. And I recognize you have said you didn't think you were overspending, but that goes back to a lack of internal controls.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Watson. Mr. Rupp.
Thank you for coming in this evening. I too bill time. That's how we make money. We sell our time, so I understand the position you're in. But I have a few questions for you. First off, at what point, if you look through your billings, did you hit that 48,000 mark?
I can't tell you exactly unless I go through every single time entry, and I've got them broken down.
But roughly, like what quarter?
Like September, when
That sounds right, August or September.
Yeah, I believe that I had notified Mr. Selesnik in late summer or fall.
We was looking close, and if he was going to, I don't think, obviously, when we put the number out there, it was not thinking you were gonna have the negotiations involvement, and some of the other things. Like I said, I think on the date, just on the on-sites, I think we're pretty close to the total. It's a little bit more, but pretty, very close. But if you want to control for, okay, what are the reasonable things that probably can happen above that? That's why I give you that 65. I don't think it's that. I think it's that because that gives you play if you do have those grievance hearings, those things that can't be scheduled. And the way Melissa and I do it when we've done this type of thing is I would try my darndest. Obviously, when you're on site, you have regular HR that you're doing interfacing with the chief day-to-day stuff. I would try my darndest to be scheduling with my counterparts. We need a grievance meeting. We need to extend it. Let's kick a time period to get it scheduled on a date because you got a full day to take care of, and do some of those things, pre-Ds, things of that nature. So, like as indicated, it was that we guesstimated late summer, really early fall, right that August, September area, and at that point in time, I think red flags probably should have gone up. We should have been like, look, if we want to get involved in this, we need a supplemental appropriation. We need to go back to council and get it. Like I said, it's much easier. Some people believe you ask for forgiveness first. I think it's a lot easier when it comes to appropriating money to get the permission first and then do things.
Well, especially since you're at risk.
Yeah.
We could say no, and that's your loss. And we have said no to people for services that go over and above and beyond what we're contracted to do business with. I'm a nice guy. I understand Mr. Zalesnik was, asked to go to these things. So I am willing to meet you somewhere. But, these are invoices from what I'm reading here, August through November. Were they all submitted at the same time, or were they submitted monthly?
They get submitted the following month.
So it's a cycle. So
it's usually, assuming people do what they're supposed to do, get the invoices on time, and the accounting department is running down your throat saying,
sure,
where's your.
But it's a 30-day cycle. So
yes.
The August bill comes, you see where your total billings are to date. That needed to be caught. What was Mr. Zalesnik's billing rate?
I want to say, do you know what he is on there as the account manager?
I can look for it here. I don't have that great.
I want to say 170 on the top of my head.
170?
I believe so, but yeah.
So about an extra 200 hours then.
Roughly.
So 200 hours divided by about an extra 25 days. Let's just do a quick math down to 30. Now I have a question, you're under no obligation to answer this, but just to sort of help me. Mr. Zalesnik's employment's terminated. Is that voluntary or involuntary?
No, he chose to move on to another opportunity.
Okay.
That was voluntary.
I
had a lot of time into working with Mike for 3 years trying to teach him how to do this, so I'm like.
I asked because the timing of this is all happening at the same time, so I didn't know if you guys were, someone was taking responsibility or accountability for this.
Well, we didn't have to address it.
I guess not.
But, Mike left voluntarily. It was something he chose. He came to us and let us know, and he's been nothing but non-professional transitioning with us. This is something, obviously, we wish that hadn't happened. And we're here to address the issue, make it right on your end, and hopefully do better. And frankly, do much better. And I think that's why we're here today. I can tell you that we didn't push Mike out the door. Over this, Mike had another opportunity and he wouldn't take it.
Okay, so you became aware of this right around the same time then? Is that when you guys took over his account? saw where the numbers were.
Dennis started notifying us that we were having the issues, sent that to Mike. But it became more of an issue as we reached the end of the year, and our accounting department is like, hey, we need back invoices, and then they're calling me and saying, hey, you know, what gives with this? And obviously, I've been doing this long enough to understand, you know, one of the internal controls a public sector employer has is your finance director is not going to cut a check. So, you know, that's not the best internal control. You want to have the ideas for what it is, and you want to have a supplemental appropriation going. That's like the backstop, the last ditch effort. And you know, once after some back and forth with Dennis about what was going on, he identified that we didn't have money in the appropriation. It had to go through council, so I understood it. And again, been doing this long enough. It's unfortunate we're here, but you know.
That's all the questions. Okay, thank you. The floor is open. Mrs. Sachs?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you coming and having this honest discussion with us to come to some understanding. So I do have a couple of questions. I appreciate that the finance director notified Mr. Zaluzhnik. I'm wondering if finance director also notified the mayor.
I'd have to go back and look, but I do believe I copied everybody.
It's your staff.
On the fact that we needed someone to look.
Okay, so the mayor was aware of the monthly invoicing. When was our union contract signed? When was that executed? What month?
I want to say 2 were in October, 1 in November.
And 860 in December.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My colleagues, one more thing. What was referenced? Not only do I agree with what Councilwoman Weiser said about internal controls for financial reasons, but I also feel that we need better internal controls for the work quality. So the example that comes to mind is what was brought to council on 2 occasions, I don't know if it was 3 or 2, of job descriptions, which were just had a typewriter throughout, the different department directors who are responsible to participate in the collective bargaining. The experience with the unions, labor negotiation was absent. Those job descriptions were woefully inadequate and just, I don't want to say boilerplate. So that type of internal control, which I brought up at the time in public meeting, was also lacking. So we need to understand, have an understanding that what we get from the company is quality control, at least coming in, and then it's our responsibility, administration's responsibility to put before council. I think one of those was even on emergency, you know, and in a manner that it's just a no-brainer. You know, it's looked at, it's reviewed, and it's presented to us in the professional manner.
Just from a process standpoint, do you guys actually adopt job descriptions by ordinance?
No.
Okay, all right. You said presented and adopted. I just was like, I was kind of.
Was it by ordinance? Maybe
No, this is a salary range.
Okay.
Salary range.
Okay.
And we had requests to job descriptions to understand the salary ranges. Thank you.
Okay, so the descriptions aren't part of the.
No, but we did get to look at them, and thank goodness, because it would put us at great risk and exposure. And the last thing I'd like to say is that the last meeting, there was quite a back and forth between administration and council regarding presenting council with the budget that was to administration, to which we were told not to worry because council is appraised of everything financial. And this is yet an example of where that is not true when it went 71% over the cost. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sykes. Mrs. Wise.
So what you're offering is possibly splitting the difference
Yes.
of about $17,000?
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming here and being transparent and doing better for us. I'm willing to give your company a second chance
Thank you.
with a new representative. I hope my colleagues are as well. I'm not sure if we have to change what it says.
I think if you were going to do that simple math, you would just change the motion and subtract 17,000 from the dollar amount that's listed, which is 82,505, and I did 65,505.
I'll do you one better. It should be 17,252.50. I'll do $252.50.
Would that be in addition
do
to?
all the math again.
So that leaves us with 65,252.50.
That would be my proposal. To amend it to that one. That'd be fine.
So I would make a motion to extend the human resource contract with Clemens Nelson for the period of 12 months, January. Okay, so this is also wrong, right?
No, it's not. This is
Oh, because this is
we're going to deal with next year
That's fine.
another time.
January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, an amount not to exceed 17. Wait, should we just add the 17,000 then?
$65,252.50.
But we already approved 48,000.
We're changing the approved amount from the 48 to the 65.
Okay, and the amount not to exceed 65,252.50.
Second. We have a motion by Mrs. Weiss, a second by Ms. Weiser. Any further discussion on the motion? Mrs. Thomas, please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Nay.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye. Okay, very good, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the members of council for graciously dealing with us and meeting us out. We're able to really do better for you. Promise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is item E, ordinance 2023-73, amending codified ordinance chapter 220 entitled Council and declaring an emergency. It says this is on first reading. We had this before. Okay, so this is on second reading. Correct. Okay. Yes, Mrs. Wise.
Okay, so I spoke to the law director today. I don't know if we have the wrong version, but I have a lot of corrections. So they're edits, they're not, I don't know, they're like from the old ordinance, from before. So I can just go through them very quickly. And then I don't know if the law director has the same issue. So in A, where it says regular meetings, regular meetings of council shall be held within the confines of the city property. Didn't we go through this because?
Yeah, but we don't think we made
changes.
I think that there were two changes. Well, there were three changes that came out of the last meeting. One was a simple formatting issue, which we tried to address. The second was updating section 220.02 relating to special meetings so that that section reflected the revisions to the ordinance, to the codified ordinance that were made earlier in the year, and that included the ability to notice those meetings by email. And then the other change that was asked for and implemented was in 2/20/17, where we indicated that agendas would be posted online and also at a location on the city's west side, which is currently identified as the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and we're attempting to gain that permission. And the thought has been that we're going to continue to try to accomplish that. We haven't yet, and if we don't, we'll come back and amend it again, but we're trying to arrange for the notice to be posted there. Other than that, all of the changes are the same as was in the version that you were presented last month. And I believe the problem last month was that the red line didn't come through on whatever version you were looking at. So we updated based on the comments from last meeting, and then we sent both Word copies and PDF copies of the update.
So then I found more changes.
Okay.
So we're not meeting on city property. So there's a bunch of things that refer to that here in a bunch of areas. I can go through each of them. I don't know how we want to deal with that.
Well, at this point, it may be better to table the ordinance, and we can review your proposed additional revisions, and I can get a version back to you for January 2nd, and do it that way. As opposed to going through, or if you want to go through change by change and
I'd
amend.
like to just hear what they are.
That's okay.
You don't have to discuss, I'm just curious about the list.
Yeah, there's like maybe 6 changes. Okay, so in A, regular meetings of council shall be held within the confines of city property. So we have to make exceptions. So B, council chambers of city hall. And then if you continue on the next page under C, at least once in a newspaper of general circulation within the city. I don't know if that's still, if the, like we don't post council meetings even in the online Friday wrap up or anything.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Under C on the second page, on the second line.
220.01 dot, 220.01. 220.01 C.
And then 220.1C2. In addition to the foregoing, council is authorized to hold special meetings of the council and committee meetings at a location outside of City Hall and or outside of the city limits of time finding any good cause. And like, I don't know if we need to update that wording or not. That would be up to the law director. Then it's like under 2 where it says A, B, C, then little d, 1, 2. The mayor shall compile and deliver a completed agenda and forthcoming meetings. I think it should be emailed, just like we changed email to be for the other ones. I think that's it.
Maybe comments on the last one, thank you. Should it be vice mayor? Based on charter.
So, yeah, probably.
And does 21D1 220.01D, I'm sorry, 221.2 C2, does that provide support that we can't hold meetings outside of City Hall or within the city limits? Your comment about the 220.01D about within the city.
That's why I asked him.
You know, I think it's, yeah. I mean, I agree that we're not going to debate it tonight, but just.
It doesn't.
I just want to walk away to discuss it. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, if I may, I think there are some adjustments that may be called for here, and if, you know, I think the publication of just once in the newspaper refers to the master notice that we do. I think Mrs. Thomas does publish that in the newspaper, and maybe what we need to do here is make sure not only that the ordinance reflect. We should be doing, the ordinance should reflect what we do and intend to do, and then we should do the thing that the ordinance actually says. And when it comes to, you know, when we publish something in the newspaper, maybe we need to take a look at that. We need to take a look at, you know, item 2, it says the council is authorized to hold special meetings of the council and or committee meetings at locations outside of City Hall and outside of city limits. We probably should say regular and special meetings, because there is a cost to have them here. And then finally, timing and distribution of agendas. What's described here in D1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, et cetera, is not reflective of what we currently do or what we generally do. And I think it might be better that we describe what we actually do, if that works for us, and have that be what we, you know, then we're providing notice to the public about what it is that we're doing. I mean, the assembly of the agenda has and has been for some time something that is worked on collaboratively with Mrs. Thomas as the clerk of council, myself, vice mayor, and often Dennis, often Luke, and often various department heads who have certain items that are up. But this is generally how we've done this, and if we continue to do it that way, then what we are writing down and saying this is what we do, we should be doing it the way, we should be writing it down the way we're doing it, or we should be making a deliberate decision to do it some other way and then write it down. But what we're doing here, whether it says item 2 is the mayor shall propound whatever versus changing that to vice mayor, that either reflects what we've been doing or what I think we're going to be doing. So I think we need to take a careful look. With that, should we go ahead and table this? We don't have a motion table, and you know, whether we bring this back on January 2nd, or if for some reason after review of the law director we feel like we need to call a special meeting and have this in place before January 2nd, I would defer to law director on that.
Well, the other thing you could do, I'm sorry to interrupt, is you could adopt this so that the vice mayor provisions are in place, and I'll come back with another ordinance that updates 220.01. I can have that for you on January 2nd, because I don't think any of the changes that are in here are objectionable to you. I think what you're saying is there are some provisions in 220.01 that are not consistent with current practices, and we need to update those too. So you could adopt this, not worry about having inconsistency between your charter and your ordinances for purposes of the meeting on January 2nd, and I'll get you a new ordinance on January 2nd that updates 220.01 to reflect actual practices.
That sounds fine, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McConville. That's kind of along the lines of what I was going to suggest. I was thinking if we did not adopt this ordinance this evening, that it would cause issues with the organization of council at our first meeting in January. So I think adopting this and coming back and correcting anything at that first meeting, I think that would be the best move forward.
As it is, we're going to be continuing to work with the BMV about confirming using the site there for posting notices. We're in the alternative working with the landlord where the BMV is to see if there's some other public place where we could post a board for posting such notices, which came up this morning with staff. Mrs. Sanders.
Thank you. A simple question, because this is driven by charter and vote, will it require just a simple majority or some other level to adjust?
We're on second reading. We are passing on emergency, so we'll need 5 votes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this item on emergency?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Windsor, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, second from Mr. King. Thank you. A couple seconds. Any further discussion on this, Mrs. Sanders?
Thank you. Just a question. So we're approving it. Does it have to be approved with a condition?
No, I mean, the provisions that are going to be approved tonight relate specifically to updates to the ordinance that cause the vice mayor to be named as the chair of the meeting in a manner that marries your codified ordinance to the charter revision. We have some inconsistencies in 220.01 with present practices, and we'll submit what I would call tandem ordinance at your next meeting to clean up those inconsistencies and allow, as a matter of codified law, for greater flexibility in scheduling your meetings that's consistent with the current practices.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Conlon. If there's nothing further, we have a motion. It is on emergency, but this is second reading, so there's no suspension of the rules necessary. It does require passage by phone for passage. So, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Thank you. Next is item F, ordinance 2023-74, amending codified ordinance section 452.99 entitled penalty and declaring an emergency. This is on first reading. It is introduced by council as a whole. I know the safety committee, I don't know, Ms. Marshall, if you wanted to take the floor on this, or if you would defer this to Congo, or if somebody else wanted to present on this.
I'll give you break to Mr. McConaughey.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Mr. McConaughey, will you take this item?
Sure. This is an ordinance that relates to penalties for parking violations that came out of the safety committee meeting. This marks a significant increase in the penalties that will be implemented for parking infractions, and those penalties increase over time for failure to pay. So there's a rate of $100 if the citation is paid within the first 30 days. That amount jumps up to $250 if the citation is paid between 30 and 60 days. And then thereafter, the cost jumps all the way up to $750 plus all costs of collection efforts. It's worth pointing out that during the safety committee meeting, Mr. Cicero described the arrangement that he's been able to work out with the Shaker Heights Municipal Court for the administration of these tickets. The city's practice going forward will be to file each and every parking ticket with the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. And the city will get 70% of all tickets paid, and the court will retain 30%. And in connection with Any tickets that go to collection, there will be a collection fee charged at the court on top of the ticket citation so that the collection efforts will be at no cost to the city. Because of our ability to work out that arrangement, this should not be a program that dents our budget. It should be something that we can do and administer without incurring significant expense. And in fact, we anticipate that this will become a source of revenue until folks in the city understand that their tickets are being filed, and that recognition should create the deterrent effect we're hoping for.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Any questions, comments, Mrs. Sands?
Thank you. I want to thank Sheriff Marshall for working this through the safety committee. That's where it was. Because we've been getting so much feedback from our residents, and she really is a voice for the people to listen and make a difference. And hopefully it will have a positive outcome. People will obey the ordinance, and it'll just go away and not be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Weiss.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if Mrs. Thomas was the one who updated this, but because
thank you.
All the numbers were wrong this morning or whatever on Thursday.
Yeah, so there's something wonky going on with our red line as it is received by the city, because on our system it appears as it's supposed to appear, and then we saw what was in the packet, and there's no decimal points, and it's like alphabet soup. So we'll try to work through that. But thank you, Ms. Thomas.
I just had in letter B, there's just an extra, the word 100 shouldn't be there. In black.
Oh yeah, 100. Right in the middle of the page.
Oh, yeah.
We could have a motion to amend.
Yes, could we have a motion to amend as raised by Mrs. Weiss?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Marshall, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sachs. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, call the roll on the motion to amend.
Mr. King? Aye. Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Motion carries. Thank you. Is there a motion, well, this is on first reading, but was it the intention to adopt it this evening?
I'll say we do it. So motion that we.
Mayor? Yes, Chief, I'm sorry, we kind of ran ahead of Chief Rogers here. If we can hold that thought on motion, hear from the chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Right now, we have an inventory of parking tickets that don't reflect the current ordinance modification. So over the next week or 2 weeks, we'll be meeting with Shaker Court to specifically go over the modifications to our current inventory that can usually be done by just applying stickers to the citations. If this is right on first reading, that would give us additional administrative time to make sure that our citations are up to the expectations of the court and for the ability to issue with these modifications in mind.
Very good. Thank you for bringing that up, Chief. With that in mind, then I would suggest we follow the Chief's lead here and go with this being the first reading, see where we are in January, and if we're ready to go, then we can go ahead and vote that on emergency so that we can then implement it and go over. Is there any further discussion on this before we have this first reading happen? And if there is none, then we will say we've had our first reading, and this will appear on a future agenda. We will then move to item G. Yes, ordinance 2023-75, directing the city codifier to adopt and codify revisions to the charter as adopted by the electorate of the city on November 7, 2023, and declaring an emergency. This is an emergency. Mr. McCombie.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just an ordinance that will direct the codifier to make the changes to the charter, and that presents to the codifier and the council a red line version of the charter reflecting the charter changes, being gender neutrality, the fact that the vice mayor runs the meetings, revisions to the recall provision, the addition of the anti-discrimination provision, and the use of modern nomenclature and description of the department heads.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mrs. Wise.
Yeah, I just had a question in Article 4. Where does the Board of Election come in here? It keeps talking about the clerk, but I don't see where it says the Board of Election. Like, when it says it gets filed, does that mean the Board of Election? Like, do we need to specify Board of Election, or when you say it gets filed, does that imply the Board of Election? Because I didn't see it anywhere. Maybe it doesn't need to be in there, but I'm just not sure.
Section 4.
Article 4, Section 1, 2, and 3. It just talks about the clerk, but no Board of Election is ever mentioned.
I believe that's our clerk of council. It gets officially filed with our clerk of council, and then the clerk takes it to the Board of Elections.
So every time there's an initiative, a referendum, or recall, do you take it to the Board of Elections?
We haven't had one yet, so.
You've never had any of those in your time?
I think what has to happen, and I think the reason it's written this way is because the clerk is going to certify it. And so the Board of Elections knows that it's getting something that's been certified by the city's clerk. And then they'll begin their process of counting signatures and making sure that the provisions are met.
So if any of those three happen, how does a petition get pulled? Doesn't it have to go through the Board of Elections first? That's why I was confused why it always went through the clerk.
We had one case, but it didn't go too far.
Yeah.
But how does
what are the mechanics?
Do you know what I'm saying? Like if somebody wants to pull a petition, let's say somebody wants a referendum, right?
Sure.
So
They make up their own petition.
they make
The petitions are made up here.
The petitioners usually write the petition, and I mean, if a petitioner were coming to a lawyer to ask them what to do, I think one of the things they would do is help them create language and then tell them to have it reviewed by someone at the Board of Elections to make sure the Board of Elections understands what it means and says, essentially blesses it.
and then they give it to the clerk.
Once the signatures are gathered.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, a petition is different than when we pull petitions from our office. That's a standardized.
No, that I understood.
Right.
I just thought it first started with the Board of Elections, so I guess I'm wrong. It starts with the clerk of council. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Floor is open. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2023-75 on emergency?
So
Motion by Mrs. Weiss. Yes, on emergency. Motion by Mrs. Weiss on emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Marshall. Any further discussion? We'll take two votes. First is on the suspension of the rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
And then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Very good, motion carries, thank you. Next item is item H, ordinance 2023-86, amending ordinance 2023-10 to increase the compensation of the vice mayor for the term beginning January 1, 2024 and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance came out of the discussion at our last meeting in connection with there being increased duties of the vice mayor as a result of the change in the charter whereby the vice mayor will be the chair of council meetings. This ordinance would raise the what we refer to as the additional supplement for the vice mayor from $400 to $1,000 annually. It also has a provision in it that directs the finance director to continue to pay the vice mayor at the current rate of $400 annually until such time as we've obtained an advisory opinion approving this raise as being other than an interim pay raise. If we are successful in getting that advisory opinion, then amounts will be paid retroactively, and if we're not successful in obtaining it, then the amount will just stay at the current $400. And we would need to wait until another election to make a change.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McConnell. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, I have one. Earlier this year, around April or so, when we were considering, I believe we were considering 2023-10 at that point, I brought up how it had been over 10 years since we had convened a committee to review the salaries of all elected officials. We piecemealed out 2023-10, now we're piecemealing this for what would appear to be an effort at a midterm compensation adjustment, which are generally prohibited. Though there may be grounds here, and that's why we're seeking an advisory opinion. But when I brought up the issue of having a committee, I was told that that would be taken under advisement, and of course no further action was taken, which is often what that means, something along those lines. I think it's appropriate that we, rather than pass this ordinance, that we convene that committee. That we convene a committee to look at all compensation of all elected officials. It's been over 10 years since that committee was convened. The last time there were adjustments was with the 2014 term, the adjustment being then to the mayor's salary, which has not been adjusted since. A lot of people might think in the community that the top job in the city, the CEO of the city, the head of administration of the city, would have the highest pay in the city. Well, that's not the case. You might think that this person is in the top three, maybe the police chief and then the fire chief, or flip those around and then the mayor. That's also not the case in the University House. You might think it might be in the top 10, because we have a finance director who's very skilled, so he's appropriately compensated. We have good people in various department head positions. The mayor is not in the top 10 for compensation. You might think the mayor would be then surely in the top third. And the mayor is not in the top third compensation here at University Heights. If you look at the pay, the gross pay paid to all full-time employees in 2022, which is the last completed year, the mayor is 75th among all full-time employees in University Heights. Every department head, every chief, every police officer, every firefighter, most members of the service department, probably all of them this coming year after the 4% raises. The mayor is in the bottom third of all full-time employees in compensation. When it was adjusted in 2024 to $75,501, in today's money, adjusted for inflation, that would be approximately $95,900. We know in other communities that Cleveland Heights, the mayor's paid, I believe, $115,000, and the chief administrative officers paid more. The subject of the chief administrative officer came up recently. They devote about $250,000 in their budget to two positions that do pretty much all the things that the mayor of this city does.
Point of order, Mayor. We're talking about an ordinance that deals with the vice mayor and a potential additional money. I appreciate your appeal for that, but point of order, we're not talking about the mayor's salary.
Talking about why we should be doing a full study for all elected officials.
And this generated based on a charter review thing that was passed by the voters, which has nothing to do with what you want to do. You can save that and ask council to bring it up later. This is a motion or an ordinance that's been presented that deals with that issue. Point of order.
Okay, thank you. This is a request for a midterm increase for the current vice mayor. If the current vice mayor is the next vice mayor, is the person who took under advisement and then declined to have this process done. I don't know if the current vice mayor will be the next mayor or vice mayor at this point. But I do know that the things that we're describing, when we're talking about, responsibilities on the agenda, I don't see where the agenda is going to change with respect to what we're doing or what the respective roles are. The mayor is still going to prepare agenda items, sponsor legislation. Those things aren't changing. It's still going to be a collective and collaborative effort to put together the agenda. And since all of us know Robert's Rules of Order, any one of us could chair this meeting, in theory, as long as we review the agenda and review the packet. We're all prepared to discuss these items, or should be, at every meeting. And if we are, then...
Unfortunately, the charter won't let you.
I have the floor right now, thank you very much.
And you're going way off somewhere.
Well, I'm going over the reasons why I have a problem with this ordinance. And I thought it'd be better to do it now in this context, discussing it with you here versus in a veto state. And I think that is why it is appropriate to have this conversation here. And if you don't want to hear Ms. Weiser, well, I'm sorry, but this is still all the time. It is about compensation of elected officials. It is about what we all do around here. So that's all I have for now. The floor is open. Ms. Weiser.
I move that we approve ordinance 202386, amending ordinance 2023-10 to increase the compensation of vice mayor for the term beginning January 1st, 2024, and declaring an emergency on emergency.
We have a motion to approve the ordinance on emergency by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. King. Any further discussion on this item? Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. I do think that in the coming year we should address the salary of the mayor, but I think that we should pass this ordinance this evening so that the vice mayor in the next year can be properly compensated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Marshall?
I also want to share that when this was in the Charter Review Commission, that was one of the main issues that was brought up as well. Wanting to make sure that if the responsibilities for the vice mayor were going to increase, that the compensation should be increased as well. And if I'm not mistaken, we were advised that we would be able to do that after the fact if it was passed. If the voters had approved that particular amendment.
I was in some of those meetings, Ms. Marshall, and I think, it was advised that that was something the council could take up. The question of, though, that I don't think was addressed then, and I don't think there was any legal opinion on at that time, was whether it could be done midterm.
Well, I just want to clarify, I don't think this is viewed as an term. I think the discussion that was had at the last meeting that was part of the genesis of this ordinance was that the term of the vice mayor is a 2-year term, which is going to expire at the end of this year. It is not known who the next vice mayor will be. If this ordinance is adopted this evening, the pay raise will be in place prior to the new term of that vice mayor. Having said all that, in an abundance of caution, the council members are in term. This is not being enacted in a manner that correlates to elections of council members per se. And so, again, in abundance of caution, my advice is to obtain an advisory opinion first to clarify that this is deemed to not be in term. And if it is deemed in term, there won't be a raise. And that's by the terms of the language of this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Floor is open. Mr. Robbins.
Just want to make sure the record reflects we're talking about a $600 increase to the vice mayor pay, whoever he or she will be January, for additional responsibility to chair the 20 meetings that we have, plus additional special meetings. If the mayor wants to take a position that the mayor's compensation should be increased by $600 in the future, then maybe we'll take that under advisement. But for now, this is a workload increase for the vice mayor, or a workload decrease for you, and we're ready to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. We'll take 2 votes. The first is on the suspension of rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Passes, and then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
A very good motion, carries. Okay, next is ordinance 2023, it's item I, 2023-77, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District Member Community Infrastructure Grant Agreement for the East Scarborough and Canterbury Relief Sewer Project and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. Chin.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the project, the sanitary relief sewer on Canterbury and East Scarborough. We already have funding in place. There are 2 sources of funding, both from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, an MCIP grant for $86,000, and then we have the community cost sharing money that was going to pick up the other 50%, which is $86,000. Once the bids came in and we found out the contract was higher, I went back to the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and asked for additional cost sharing dollars, and this is what this is. I think it's an additional $45,000 and change. It'll bring us up to 100% funded through these 2 sources. Now, they told Mr. Kennedy, it's reimbursable, so we have to pay for it first and then get reimbursed after it's over. So I recommend passage of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chin. Any questions for Mr. Chin? If not, is there a motion to approve on emergency?
So moved. I'd like to-
Okay, motion to approve on emergency by Mrs. Sacks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas will take the roll first on the suspension of the rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rapp?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Now the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rapp?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is item J, ordinance 2023-78, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Cuyahoga County, Ohio for the road resurfacing project of Warrensville Center Road, declaring an emergency. This is on first reading. This item is with respect to the Warrensville Center Road project. Ordinance 2023-78 is more of a placeholder for what the agreement will ultimately look like. A lot of it's going to depend on, well, a number of factors, but one is we've been working with Eric Mack and Nicole English at the county to how this project will proceed. We're looking to do this jointly with South Euclid and the county. And the county has offered thus to take on the management of the project, and part of the management of the project would be handling the engineering. Now, when they go out for engineering, this would be a QBS selection, presumably. That would be the first option, where the city is working with the county, would look to the county to hire a design consultant to prepare construction plans. And typically with the QBS selection, that's going to be very similar, basically essentially similar or the same to the process that we implemented by ordinance earlier this year, where we would go out to bid for design engineering. But the we here would be the county doing it and not the city doing it, because it's a joint project between two cities managed by the county. I'm inclined to think that that would be a good idea to have the county go ahead and do this project and take the lead on it and work with South Euclid. But I also wanted to be sure that we were disclosing to the council, the desirability of going in that direction, especially in light of a newer ordinance that has been passed with regard to the bidding, because instead of us handling the bidding process here, we'd be looking at the county. But then another piece of this, which is key and we need to weigh in on, is if we are inclined to have the county manage the project, and the likely way that they would do it, one way, the general way that they would go about it would be to do the QBS selection. There is also a request by South Euclid or some desirability on behalf of South Euclid that their engineer simply be the one that's chosen to do this. And if the parties agree to do that, I think we could waive that, and as could the county, and Horvensic could be used on this project. But this is something where we would have to agree to it, and not necessarily asking tonight for a vote on that, but for some general feedback that I could take back to the county on a couple of points. One, whether we're fine with having the county manage this project, which I do think is beneficial. And two, our feelings of going out to bid for the engineering, the design engineering on this project, to the community generally, versus South Euclid advancing Horvensic as being the engineer potentially on this project. This is what.
I have a couple of questions. So
Yes.
it's going from Fairmont to Cedar. There's no South Euclid there.
Our partners. But then the South Euclid lanes of Washington, Warrensville Center Road, are also being done. Our part in our city is that part.
Oh, you're saying it's continuing until they make it.
Yes. Now, part of it was done earlier this year. Those are lanes that are in the city of Cleveland Heights. So if you're thinking about where on Warrensville Center Road some work was done south of Mayfield heading towards University Heights, those were Cleveland Heights lanes that were done this year. This is for fiscal year 2026, which means this could start as soon as July 1st, 2025. And that we will do the project, our part in our city, the part in South Euclid, so that all of Warrensville Center, basically from the Mayfield general area, maybe Joe, you would have some, Jim, you would have some additional detail on this. But it's a larger project if we combine the South Euclid and all this up.
So part of South Euclid was done already one side. Part of a little bit of Cleveland Heights was done. I mean, there was one section of South Euclid done. But also, what year was our part of Warrensville? What have been wrong ago? I feel like we did Warrensville.
Once we striped.
It's been a number of years since we resurfaced with Warrensville Center Road.
Okay, and then what are they doing about those bump outs? Are they going to take them out?
It's all part of the design process once we get to it, yes.
Do we have a say in that?
Yes, we do, yes.
And what's your feeling on
Well, I think the mid-block crossings were an interesting idea, but, I think that there may be way to give weight here on this, especially after the traffic study we had done, where if we're looking to do the road diet, we want that to be part of the design from Silsbee on down to Fairmount Circle. If we're dropping a lane in each direction, adding bicycle lanes that are perhaps parking protected, it probably makes more sense to lose the mid-block crossings at this point, to having more consistent flow right there, and not to cramp up those areas where we could potentially have parking protected, parking protected bicycle lanes, and one lane in each direction of the turn, because then that mid-block crossing is in the way of a potential turn.
I thought there was talk about the boulevard.
I mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see, but I didn't even get that discussion.
I'm just like, does the city have say in any of the design? I know that Brian has mentioned many times in the past that it's unsafe to bike on Warrensville the way that it's set up right now. Many bikers have mentioned that.
I would agree.
You don't agree?
I know.
I agree.
I know that other people, I don't remember, I'm trying to remember if it was like a county meeting I was in or something, mentioned the boulevard. Like, what kind of say do we have in this design process?
I do think we have some say. To go back to your question, South Euclid and University Heights both received NOACA grants for this resurfacing of Warrensville Center Road. Separate NOACA grants, but it's the same road in the same year. And that's why we approached the county, and the county said, well, maybe, because it is two cities, and it's NOACA funding, which is 80%. They said they could manage it for us. And the other part of that is finished, they would pay also 60% of the design fee, and the city would then only be responsible for 40%. So it's 60-40 on the design, it's 80-20 on the construction, but the county picks up 10% of that. So we only have 10% then, plus the 40% of engineering, if we let them manage it. Now, do we lose some control when they manage it? I think we do, but I think we still have a say, Mayor. I think we will have a say in the end of the table, but you're dealing with federal dollars and the county highway, so the county does have to approve it.
All I'm saying is maybe to keep in mind, and this is just my opinion, there is a boulevard in South Euclid Park at Walmart already. Now, you obviously can't have a boulevard by the Whole Foods area over there, but you really can, and especially if we're strategically thinking that Warrensville, where all the two-family houses are, we might reimagine that zoning differently. We need to really think how to beautify that and how to, what that's going to look in 10, 20 years. I don't know. I mean, the other thing to think about is I know that when I drive to Auburn Green Road right now, and a lot of people might not agree with me, but it's really congested when they made it to 2 lanes. I mean, it is.
There's also a boulevard in Shaker on the other side, and I don't remember this, but back in the, it's what it used to be. Wallinger Center was a boulevard street way back when, and you didn't go through the circle either there at Fairmont, you went around. So, and that was changed over the years, taken out and paved, and then you go through the middle. But I think we could come to the table with that. I can't say that we can force our way, but I think you should have some say. You do have some cash in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some say, and some of the things that we were looking at were things that would be a little less cost prohibitive than adding a boulevard, for the better part of the mile. We're talking about, basically adding 2 curves, and then that also limits, some of what we would do striping wise when it comes to bike lanes or something else. And it does, for at least for the current purposes, it doesn't reduce the for people who would turn into those driveways. They would have to basically U-turn and come back and go in, which we have not studied that. We have not spoken with residents about it. And it may be something where we would want to have a public hearing with respect to, especially people who live on Warrensville, but people who use Warrensville. We all use Warrensville. For what we'd really like to see. I would love to see, if money wasn't moving the curbs out to create larger tree lawns, so actually tree line ones. That would be beautiful. And it would still be functional, not having a boulevard in the middle, because you would have this tree-lined street, and we still have a lot more freedom with regard to lane configurations when it comes to whether we create a protected bike lane or something else. And it's a lot easier for us to take out a couple of mid-block crossings than to, when we want to try something else, to take out an entire boulevard. It's a very expensive proposition to put it in and take it out. But I think it's worth having those conversations. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, quite a few comments, questions here. Help me to understand what the project is. What did you do a study already, or did you do some type of preliminary work, put together a budget?
It's a resurfacing project.
So just like
it's the way it's scoped right now.
Okay, because I heard road diet, I heard other terms being used to describe this project. So is it just, when I think of resurfacing, I think of no-till. So scrape the layer off, they put the new asphalt down.
And I think
is that what this is?
I think that's the way it's scoped with NOACA. We did do a road diet study on there to see if we can't deal with less lanes and more room for parking and or bike lanes. And we did prove that we had the study. From Silsbee down to Fairmont, you can do it, but from Silsbee to Seaview, you cannot.
So is that part of this project, the road diet?
We have to have the scoping meeting with the ODOT. And it can be. Because if we go in there and just ask them and we don't have a study, then they will say, well, where's your study? So we do have a study. It can be part of the project once it gets going. And we did present that to the county, that we had the study done.
Okay.
But it's not part of the scope now, or the budget, I don't think. Doesn't mean it can't be amended.
Okay. And I asked because this could just keep going, and if we're going to spend money on Warrensville Center Road, let's do it right. Let's do it right the first time. If we have a scope to do whatever, put it in the scope. I want to read what the scope is. But I do want to be careful and caution the road diet, because as we are looking at the Warrensville Center Road component for zoning, so many things came up with whether we do parking on street parking, overnight parking on Warrensville Center Road came up. So we just had our first conversation with that. I mean, it's in its infancy. And I imagine to put that in later would be quite costly. So I really want to get my hands around what this project is, what its scope is, and what it could be. Because perhaps we do something else, whether it be boulevard or so on and so forth. But without knowing really what the scope is, I know the road needs to be done. I have no problem just resurfacing, but if we're talking about other elements here, like road diet, I'm not interested until we know what we're doing. with regard to the zoning Warrensville Center Road district. And if it's just resurfacing, I'm fine with that. I want to know what the budget is. Then I want to go on to talk about cooperation here. I'm a little confused because Mayor, you mentioned that, I don't know how I can't remember how you said it, but that the county would be responsible for the management of the project, but it's the city who still would do the design, correct?
No.
Because that's how this reads here, under cooperation, section B, item 2.
Well, right, if you're looking at the ordinance itself, the ordinance is basically a placeholder. I also forwarded everybody an email last week that went over those numbers that you're asking about. Everybody should have this. And it's also in the packet, but that's kind of hard to read. It's very fine print in the packet. But this is the email from, I sent it on Friday, December 15th at 2:33 p.m., forwarding the email from Eric Mack at the county. There's for the University portion, the overall construction of the project is a $3.19 million project, and for South Euclid, it's a $5.06 million project. And they're anticipating design of 5% for South Euclid, $230,000. Design for University Heights at 5% of $145,000. And the county would contribute to South Euclid $138,000, to University Heights $87,000. So then South Euclid would be responsible for $52,000. We'd be responsible for $58,000. These are all estimates, of course.
Okay, so you do have estimated cost of construction.
Right.
Okay, because I thought I asked and there wasn't one. So
NOAC put that together.
So NOAC, okay, you did it, but NOAC, but there is an estimated cost of construction.
Right.
Could we find out what went into that estimated cost of construction?
Yes.
I would appreciate that. Then this agreement here that's in the packet, I'm sorry, no, this is the ordinance. This would get updated then to say that the county will prepare construction plan and specification.
Right, this was just a placeholder.
Okay.
I would not get hung up on it.
No, that's not a huge thing to get hung up on, because if the county's taking responsibility for the construction drawings, then it needs to say that, not the city.
Well, clearly, yeah.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of responsibility.
We agree there needs to be a major revision of the ordinance.
Yes, okay. So for the next meeting, we will come back with the update here.
Well, no, I mean, this is for first reading and to be held for a while. We got some work to do yet with the county, but
because I wasn't ready for this.
Instead of just taking it off, I wanted to present this tonight.
Okay.
Begin a conversation. There's, it's often said, why is this the first time I'm hearing something? Every time you hear this, the first time is the first time. This is still pretty early in the process, but there's a lot we need to do if we want to get it done by fiscal year 2026. So
by 26, okay.
Right, which begins July 1, 2025.
Okay.
Right.
So there's still time.
There is time.
Yes, okay.
And there's still time to discuss boulevards versus moving on curves versus just a mill and fill versus implementing some part of the road down. These are all discussions we can still have.
Okay, that's appreciated. And then I think since we're having the discussion and you've outlined that you would like to get the community involved, I think that's great, because as we're looking at doing the zoning, perhaps we do a workshop. Or if the zoning consultant doesn't want to come, maybe we get our boards together to do this workshop to gather feedback and, hey, what do we really think about the Warrensville Center Road? And work that way. So, okay, I appreciate that. I do have some hesitation, though, on just hiring Hovansik to do this work. I much prefer, after all the work we've done, to do a professional services ordinance, that we follow through with that. This would be maybe the pilot project, to go through that QBS process, as opposed to just hiring somebody. So I do not prefer just hiring Hovansik. I just want to put that on the record.
I anticipated that would be your response, but I didn't want to just assume and say that would be what council members would want. Pretty good idea, but, yeah. But this is why we're here. Great, good.
I just want to add that you're free to do this project on your own.
Yeah,
without the county, and South Euclid could do their own project. The county's only going to get involved if it's two communities, because otherwise it doesn't make sense for them.
Right.
But then you don't get their 60% of the design and then another 10% of construction. It's an 80-20 split on construction from NWACA. County road, the county says we'll step in and take 10% of that and pay 60% of the design.
Wait, can you back up? So if we manage the project,
Yes.
what's the split?
80-20, and you pay 100% of engineering.
And if the county manages it,
They pick up 10% of that 20 of the construction, so, and then they'll pick up 60% of design. So there are advantages, you lose some control, but there's advantages, but you can choose not to do that, you know.
Yeah, and one of the things we'll have to consider is while we think about what we want to look like, if we're going to do something other than mill and fill, we will want to act quickly, because if we get behind, South Euclid could say, well, we want to go ahead with our project.
Yeah.
So, sorry, University Heights, we're going to do it then, and if you're waiting another year or two to figure out what you want to look like, that's your right, but we're going to go ahead. They don't want to hold back, and the condition of Warrensville Center Road, their part of it is in worse shape than ours.
well, it's still a county road. So I imagine the county funds would be there in 26 or 27 or whatever happens.
They're here within the context of doing this joint project for two municipalities. If we do it by ourselves, I don't know that we get that.
They said they wouldn't manage it, correct.
They said they would.
They would not.
That's what I thought.
If it wasn't together.
If it wasn't together, that's correct. We met with them, and that's what they said.
I hope the South Euclid understands our predicament.
And we're working with South Euclid now. We're just going to keep that relationship there.
Right. Yes.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Saxon,
But it's also in South Euclid's best interest to get the same incentives for the county, because if they just say, oh, we're going ahead without University X, I mean, there's quite a significant incentive that goes away. So
Absolutely.
I don't think I think speaking about it and moving forward, you know, in a thoughtful and planful way, behooves both communities. I don't think it'll go away so fast.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. West.
If South Euclid doesn't work with us, they also lose their design piece.
Yeah, they'd be on their own, and it'd be the same thing. The county's not going to step
So,
in.
but I'll tell you what the problem is. South Euclid's just resurfacing, so they don't care about University Heights.
They are not going to do any bump outs or any.
All they need to do is they're out of
Mill and
South,
fill.
so they don't really care about University Heights. So we actually do have a little bit of pressure that we need to.
A little bit, yes.
All right. I think I've got what I need to continue the conversation with the county, but if there's anything else that you would like to bring up at this time, this is one.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
What committee would this go into?
It's an important enough thing. I might suggest we do the whole. I mean, the redo of the Center Road is, we all have a stake.
Just to keep in mind that you probably go, it's a big deal, so.
It is. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your input. If you think of something else, think about me as well.
It's a good question.
All right. Letter K, ordinance 2023-79, reappointing Luke F. McConville as law director effective January 1, 2024, and declaring an emergency. This is an emergency. Who would like to take this?
Well, Mayor, real briefly, this is the ordinance that would reappoint me for the 3-month period that would allow council to take this step to find a new law director.
Very good. Thank you. Everybody very good, and thank you for providing that explanation. Is there a motion to approve on emergency? Okay, motion on emergency by Ms. Marshall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cooney. Any discussion? Mrs. Sachs?
Thank you. I'm just dismayed that Mr. McConville has submitted his resignation, especially after the exchange at the last council meeting, and also many exchanges in past meetings where he has rendered a legal decision for our city, which was publicly refuted by the mayor. And I worry about that, and I hope we'll be okay moving forward, and that the mayor will accept legal opinions from our legislative branch of government, more in the spirit in which it's provided, the professionalism and spirit. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Sachs. And I think you bring up, whether you meant to or not, an excellent point. You know, legal opinions aren't supposed to be from the legislative branch of government. They're supposed to be for the city. I mean, if you view the law director as being the city council's lawyer, that's part of the problem.
I didn't say that.
Well, you were talking about legal opinions from the legislative branch of government. Those were your
I'm
words.
sorry, from the judicial branch.
The
I meant
Shaker Heights
judicial.
Municipal Court.
He's a law director, and we have a prosecutor. I apologize. I meant judicial branch. But there's also problems with the legislative branch. I changed what I said. Thank you. Thank you for helping me clarify.
Yes, I don't know what to say now, but yes, the judicial branch of the government of University Heights is not the law director, but is the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. The law director does not render decisions; he renders opinions. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Wong.
Yeah, I would like to mention that whoever the vice mayor is next month will have to expeditiously work with the clerk to get a advertisement to hire a new law director, and council needs to be aware that they need to be available for interviews. And on top of that, we have a rushed budget process, so there will be a lot of meetings in the next 3 months. I would hope that whoever the vice mayor is will invite the mayor to participate in those interviews, but everyone will have to make themselves available to not just law director interviews, but to the budget meetings as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? We'll take 2 votes. First is on the suspension of rules. Mrs. Thomas.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
And on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is item L, ordinance 2023-81, acknowledging and accepting the appointment of Michael E. Cicero as prosecutor and assistant law director, authorizing a contract for compensation. This is on emergency. Mr. McCombie.
Yes, Mayor, this is the ordinance that would appoint Mike Cicero as city prosecutor for an additional 2-year period. I think the chief of police will echo that Mr. Cicero has a very good working relationship with the police department, along with the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. He's brought a lot of expertise to the position, and as your current law director, I'm recommending his reappointment as prosecutor.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that in my 8 years on council, Mr. Cicero has been the most available prosecutor. He is a professional, happy to make a motion on emergency to appoint him for another 2 years.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. We have a motion to appoint him on emergency to approve this ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Weiss. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take 2 votes. First is on suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
And on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
A very good motion carries. Thank you. Next is item M, ordinance 2023-82, reappointing Kelly M. Thomas as clerk of council effective January 1, 2024, and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. McConville, can I take this one?
Sure. I really don't know what the city would do without Kelly Thomas, and so we're asking and recommending another 2-year appointment as clerk of council. Kelly's role and work speaks for itself. I think everyone on council would agree how indispensable she is, and this ordinance is before you to make another 2-year appointment.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance on emergency?
So moved, Mayor.
Motion by Mr. King on emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Any discussion? Mr. Cooney?
Thank you, Kelly, for all that you do. Truly, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Mrs. Weiss, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. You're getting better every year.
All right.
Ms. Marshall.
I know that I haven't been on city council that long, but since I've been here, I've observed her working very, very hard, going above and beyond, and I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. If there's nothing further, Mrs. Thomas, we call a roll first on the suspension of rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
On the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Welcome back. Thank you. Item N, ordinance 2023-80, authorizing the mayor to enter into a transportation services contract with Senior Transportation Connection and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. This is, it's that time of the year again. We have Transportation Connection, Senior Transportation Connection back up for another year. This last year, we had about $14,500 approximately in ridership total spent on rides. So if we thought and we're sure that we would keep it under $15,000, we wouldn't have to bring it back here to you, but there's always the possibility it could cost a little bit more. There are some small adjustments here that were in the packet, but generally it's very similar to what we've been doing. And one thing that we did send out late in the day today, there is in section 4 a section where the $20,000 cap is removed. We put that right back in. I mean, the idea wasn't going to be open-ended, but initially the $20,000 was taken out because we only spent $14,500, but we could approach 20. The thought here, and then with the redistributed version, was to put the $20,000 back in and authorize up to $20,000 worth of rides. So if this needs your approval, I would be happy to accept a motion to approve on emergency.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Ms. Weiser. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Mr. Cooney. Mrs. Weiss.
In section 10, what changed from last year?
Section 10.
I couldn't tell because it was highlighted, but.
Yeah, this to me was form over substance. I think the insurance levels are the same.
liability.
Yeah, it's more just updating the verbiage with regard to contractor maintaining insurance.
And they kept the gas rate the same even though gas prices went down. That was like a big thing
Fuel
last year.
surcharge, whatever.
They kept it at, that was a thing like over,
Yeah.
came back like 3 times last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it appears to be the same, yeah.
Was that ever discussed?
Well, the negotiated base rate assumes the fuel cost at or below $3.75 an gallon.
So it shall not exceed as the cost of fuel decreases. That at or below. But similar way to say it would be not to exceed.
Well, no, I think it, I don't know about not to exceed, but,
At $3.75.
at or below.
At or below.
Right, I mean, the fuel surcharge only kicks in when fuel goes above $3.75 a gallon, and then there's a formula that's listed here. Well, it gives a citation where the formula is.
So if the monthly average exceeds the base rate, the fuel surcharge per trip will equal to 1 penny for every 1 penny above the base rate. So essentially paying for the cost of gas.
When it goes up.
Goes up, you match a penny. If it's below, then it's matched at the same time.
Well, if it's below that, we're just at the base rate.
Right.
Any further questions or comments? If not, there's a motion on the floor. I'll go ahead and take 2 votes. Is there a second? Oh, I didn't think so.
There was a second.
Yes. Yes. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the suspension of the rules?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
And then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good, motion carries. Thank you. Next is letter O, ordinance 2023-83, authorizing transfer of funds from the general fund 100 to the community improvement corporation CIC fund 800 and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, Mayor, this $25,000 transfer was included in the original permanent budget for 2023. And at the last CIC meeting we had a week or so ago, the board asked that this transfer be put on the agenda for this meeting so it would be posted prior to the end of the year.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Comments? And if not, is there a motion to approve on emergency?
So with emergency.
Okay, a motion to approve on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas will take 2 votes. First on the suspension of the rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
And then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Thank you. Next is item P, ordinance 2023-84, authorizing the advancement of funds from the general fund 100 to the street maintenance fund 200, University Square TIF fund 240, and capital improvement fund 400, declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. These are advances, which are basically loans from the general funds, other funds. So for the street maintenance fund, we need roughly $580,000 to cover the expenses related to the Cedar Road resurfacing project that we have not been reimbursed yet from either ODOT or from the city of South Euclid. That reconciliation, according to the information I received from the city engineer, will not be finalized until sometime late in the spring next year. So we need to have a positive fund balance at the end of the year for audit purposes. So as soon as we get that money coming into that fund, based on the final reconciliation, we will come back to council and advance that money back to the general fund. There's also two smaller advances, one for the TIP fund. It's $35,000 that we will recoup when the first half settlement TIF collection posts next year. And because of all the vehicle purchases that weren't in the original budget for the 400 fund, we need roughly about $9,000 transferred into the capital fund to cover the negative balance in that fund. Those will be repaid. The capital fund, as everybody knows, is funded primarily by 5% of income tax collections. So we'll come back early in the year once we get the money in the 400 fund and ask for the advance back to the general.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? And if not, is there a motion to approve on emergency?
So moved.
Motion to approve on emergency by Ms. Marshall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. King. Any discussion? We'll take two votes. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll on the suspension of the rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
On the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. Next is item Q, ordinance 2023-87, amending ordinances 2022-69, authorizing permanent and final 2023 appropriations, current other expenditures of the city of Unit Wisconsin, Ohio for the period commencing January 1, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, this is our final appropriations for the year 2023. These will have to be filed with the County Budget Commission sometime within the first week of January. As I said in the briefing memo, we're significantly under budget. These are to provide necessary appropriation levels to cover expenses over these last 2 weeks. Most specifically, we have one more payroll that's due on December 28th, and I want to make sure there's enough appropriation to be a cushion for all the payroll expense. We're also processing the retroactive pay increases for all the service department personnel this week. The net effect of all these changes, there are some reductions in there for things that I don't think we need prior to the end of the year, but the net effect on the entire budget for all funds is $27,817.08.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions, Mr. Kennedy? If not, is there a motion to approve on emergency?
So moved on emergency.
Motion to approve on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Weiss. Is there any discussion? We'll take two votes. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next, we've already addressed letter R. So letter S is motion to approve 2023-24 tree pruning and removal bid from Parks Trees, the best and lowest bid in an amount not to exceed $49,668 and enter into contract with the same. Mr. Pennington is not here today, but there is a memo in the packet. We have used Parks Tree before. As reflected in the memo, they professionally performed previous successful tree pruning and removal contracts throughout Northeastern Ohio and is recommended by our city arborist, and therefore Mr. Pennington has recommended the award of the 2023-24 tree pruning and removal contract Parks Tree in the amount of $49,668. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Okay, motion by Mrs. Sacks, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. King, any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good, motion carries, thank you. Letter T is a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. We do have a University Square update, which hopefully will not take very long.
Can I also add legal for Yad in University Square?
Sure. Okay, so motion enter executive session. Later in the meeting for University Square and for University Square and Yadi. Is there a second? I'm sorry, were you making the motion?
I just added
You just added it.
And that's to clarify, that's for real estate and pending litigation.
Correct. Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. King, is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Marshall. Mrs. Thomas, you call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks? Aye. Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall? Aye. Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Okay, very good, motion carries. Well, the executive session actually have reports. We'll turn to committee reports, and the first usually is building and housing. Ms. Walker.
The Building and Housing Committee met this evening. We continued discussion of the safe belt contract, cleaning it up. We have, it rolls over on March 1st. We have a 60-day in case we want to do something different. We discussed permit fees. Mr. Cheatham had brought us a whole set. The committee voted to, and I'll be sending it to the law director for an ordinance to be prepared to raise the fees with an addendum that asks that they be reviewed on a 3-year basis going forward from here. And basically that took up the meeting. Next meeting, we're going to be working with housing because Mr. Engelbrecht was on vacation, so we still have some issues to go over with him.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Walker. Community outreach, Mr. King.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. King. Economic development, Mr. Rock. No report. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Finance, Mrs. White. Thank you, Mrs. Mons. Recreation, Mr. Cooney.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a meeting on Tuesday, December 12th. Talk about a number of items. It was very productive leading into the upcoming year, including repair tennis courts for that and potential improvement in communication for when there may be scheduled sessions at Purvis Park and the tennis courts to offer residents to plan accordingly. Signage at Purvis Park Pool and potential resources that may be needed, such as umbrellas, canopies, and also looking at the physical plan for any short or long-term maintenance. We had a discussion on Signal Box artwork for what could be available materials and how we can get that done, similar to Shaker Heights, what they have done with their Signal Box, city-owned Signal Boxes. And also we had a discussion for the potential grant for the fitness or national fitness campaign if we were to move forward with that project. But also to kind of tie in with the Walt potential dog park, if the interest on that, what could be done. I'm expecting to have a doodle poll sent out for a January meeting for the Recreation Committee to follow up on these items and to assist planning for the upcoming summer season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooney. Safety, Ms. Marshall.
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Service and utilities, Mrs. Sacks.
Thank you. The next Service and Utilities Committee meeting will be Tuesday, January 16th at 6 p.m., where SES Engineering will present their findings from the recent assessment of our recycling trash collection. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee of the whole, Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you. The Board of Elections came to continue their discussion on different voting methods. It was a interesting discussion, and I think Council of the Whole, hopefully, when they have their retreat, can continue to discuss that if they wanted to, if Council wants to do anything further with that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weiss. We will now use this time to go into executive session. I'm not aware of any other business that we're going to have beyond a motion to adjourn. So folks who are here, you're welcome to stay. But if not, have a great holiday.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.